Usman, how is it? Okay, so the recording has started, right? Good morning, Alvin. Guys, you take into a note this week's changing a little bit. I'm sorry about the incident that we have with the process control lab last week. There was a bit of hiccup in the coordination between the tutor and myself and the lab tech Doris. So that's why we hope that you can come to the sessions tomorrow on Tuesday. I'll also try to come as well to see how you guys doing. Okay. So that hands-on session is very important. Okay, and your process modeling and optimization week. Not that intuition week that will be due, and then you will have a process. You will have to give a presentation on your process on your project one. Not that project one took about will account for 30% of your process modeling. So it's quite important. If you have any questions, you can open up a consultation time with me. Like I told you again, many of you have asked questions to me about the project one. If I want you to put in the most important aspects according to your marking rubrics in your report, there is a page limitations on that thing. If you think that there is a need for extra informations, you can put it up in the appendix, but I don't want to get also a big appendix, only the information that you think is important and related with your project one report. If I think that the information that you put into the appendix is important and that complements the one on the report, then that will be good. Okay. Okay, so today we will continue still on the LAM model. Next week we will move into the development of the distributed model. In here we are covering the second part of the transient distributed model. So instead of last week we talked about single step. Okay, this one we talk about the multi-step algorithm. So there are two methods that we cover in here. The first one is the Adams method. The second one is the Adams-Moulton method. Okay. So what are the differences between the single step and the multi-step algorithm? So in the single step algorithms, as embodied by or as simplified by the Euler and Runge-Kutta methods, this one, basically we obtain the value of yi plus 1 from the value of the yi. So the trajectories of y is obtained with the single step span from xiyi to xi plus 1, yi plus 1. The procedure marches forward, taking single step of width h over the entire interval of integration. Okay. The methods are very suitable for solving initial value problem because they are self-starting from a given initial point of integration. The multi-step algorithm, however, is a bit different because in order for you to get the value of yi plus 1, you need several values of y. yi plus, yi minus 1, yi minus 2 as the base point. Therefore, these are non-self-starting. Okay. To solve the initial value problems where only y naught is known, then the multi-step algorithm must be prime, meaning that you still need to find another way to get the value of yi minus 1, yi minus 2, and other points that you need in order for you to get the enough points for you to get this yi plus 1. If you put in your additional materials, you see that what you are given originally in the beginning is only this point xi. Okay, so if you use a single step, what you get is xi plus 1, then the next one xi plus 2, the next one xi plus 3, and so forth and so forth. So for you, in order for you to get the multi-step algorithms, you are required to find these things, xi plus 1, but you are only given xi, the value of the yi at xi. Okay, therefore you need to find a way for you to be able to get this value yi minus 1 at xi minus 1 and yi minus 2 at xi minus 2 in order for you to get this. You will ask me again, sir, why you will ask me, Jaka, why bother to use a multi-step algorithm? Because there are occasions or there are cases where, for example, you want to increase the accuracy to above the single-step algorithm. So if you want to bring down the error to lower than your step size, increase to the order of 3, for example, or increase to the order of 4, or in another situations, for example. So the emphasis for these things is actually not, it's probably a bit more difficult to apply for us for conventional problems, but it's very important for you to have a knowledge of actually what this is and how you can use these things. Okay. So the first one that we talk about is the Adams method. So in the Adams method, we evaluate yi plus 1 by integrating the derivative function over the interval xi to xi plus 1. If we approximated if we use this fxy, if in the place of this fxy we use a second degree backward Gregory-Newton interpolating polynomial, then what we will get is the Adams method. So you can see that in this fxy in here, we put in a second degree backward Gregory-Newton interpolating polynomials in here. Okay. This, you have a 3 terms in here. This is called the second degree backward Gregory-Newton interpolating polynomial. You can see that it is called second order because you have an order of 2 in here. Okay. This fi in here is f equal to fxi yi, and it may be considered a function of I only. Then you will ask me, Jaka, how can this one become this? Okay, and basically here we know that this one is in the order of the step size increased to raised to order of 4. This is where I give you this one. You can see that this term is in here. When you integrate, that will become half of this fi multiplied by h. So you can see in here it becomes this. Okay, I will not go into the details on these things. I have given another video to describe these things, and you can also infer these things from here. So the third term in here, how can becomes like this? This will be another questions. Okay, that will be from here. So you go in here, you use a substitution, then you convert these things, you integrate. Don't forget to, if you use another variables called u, then you need to know that your upper limit and the lower limit will change again. That is reflected in here. Okay. Then you get these things. You approximate that this one is equal h because we don't have a changing increment in here. So the increment of xi minus 1, or xi plus 1 minus xi, or xi minus 1 minus xi minus 2 are the same. Okay, so the step size are similar. So in this regard, then this will become h. Then you continue, you will be able to get this formula. So now it comes it comes quite direct, right? You know that this one is become this. It was actually not given in the book, but I just do my own my own checking using using a calculation. So I just scratch on the paper and try to derive it myself how this can become like this. Okay, then the next one, you use a backward difference table in order for you to change from here to here. This is the final form that you will use. How you get that thing? You will ask me, Jaka, how do I get this thing? So this is what you do. So you get this one, you put in I equals 0 for an example. So this one will be equal f naught. Then you put in your backward difference table. Your backward difference table is this. Okay. So what is this? F naught. What is this upside down delta F naught? What is that one? So that will be this one, F naught. So that will be equal to this. That will be F naught minus F minus 1, right? And then that's the same with this upside down delta raised to order of 2 multiplied by F naught. What is these things in here? So you get this one from this. F naught minus 2, F minus 1 plus F minus 2. Correct? Then what did you do in here? You just need to break it up again, and then you merge the same terms together. Then you will get these terms in here. Okay, so that comes straightforward basically. So once you get the backward difference table, you apply it properly, you will get this one. Therefore, you know that in order for you to get I plus 1, it's not sufficient for you to only get I, but you also need to get the value of the yi minus 1 at xi minus 1, and then also the value of the yi minus 2 at the value of at x equal xi minus 2. Therefore, for these other two, in order for you to get, then you need to get you need to use another method such as Runge-Kutta method. Okay, so the ordinary differential equation can then be solved by this equation. The thing that are important in here that you see is that this is raised to the order of the step size of raised to 4, meaning that the error will be very, very small if you use this Adams method. Okay, so what's the difference with the Adams-Moulton method? The Adams-Moulton method, it's the same, except you are using a third-degree interpolating polynomial. So instead of using a second order, you're gonna use a third order Gregory Newton interpolating polynomial. Okay, if you repeat again the steps like what we showed you above, then you will get this. No, you will get this one, Adams method, sorry. Note that because you are using a third order, meaning your error will become even lower again. But you need to find another additional point again, which is yi minus 3 at xi minus 3. Okay, so there are a special algorithm that we can apply in here. We can use we can interpolate the function using a cubic Gregory-Newton backward interpolating polynomial. So in here, in this method, we are using a predictor and corrector equation. First, you use this, then you correct this using this. Okay, then you iterate back and forth until the corrected value converges. Two application of the corrector is the most optimum in terms of the calculation time and accuracy. Generally, solution of the ordinary differential equation using this method will start from the 5th point. Okay, guys, I don't really go into the details of trying to solve these things because this method will be a bit more complicated, but the main important thing is that you know that such method exists where you have a multi-step method, but so you are prepared to get a tool in case you need to use these things, but I will not go into the details of the thing. Instead, I will just go into a sample that are a bit simple for you to understand. Okay, so let's go into the example of modeling and simulation of ordinary differential equation containing initial value problem. So in here we have a plug flow reactor model. Okay, so you want to get the equations of this, the overall equations for the small tip section. You can use this df is equal r multiplied by dv. Okay, and then you need to know that the molar flow rate is related to the velocity, which in most cases velocity and cross-sectional area of the tip are constant. Then you can deduce that dv is equal a dz. Then you will get this equation that is applicable to your plug flow. reactor. Your reaction is a function of the distance. So the initial concentration is also known in here. If you want to see the detail in the derivation, what you can see is these things in here. Okay, dF is equal RdV. This equal this again. It's important for you to always put up the unit and unit cancellations to check whether your units are correct or not. It's very important. Then after you get these things, then you can equalize that this U equal dF is equal UA dC. Then you can equalize this with this term in here. Okay, as a result, you will get this particular equation that describe your plug flow reactor problem. Okay, so this one is an isothermal plug flow reactor problem where 2A becomes B. So in this particular scenario, the assumption given is that the reaction is a simple reactions that follows the stoichiometry in here. Okay, so your dCA over dZ will be equal to the minus 2kCA square divided by U for A. For B, that will be kCA square divided by U. C itself is not consumed, and then you have the initial value of this that is put into your system. So if you go back here again, we have an equivalent amount of A with the following reaction. Okay, assume that the reaction takes place in liquid phase and that the volumetric flow rate remains constant even during reaction. The equations for each component become this. The rate of reaction is second order with respect to A, where the units of K are volume per mole time. Okay, the equations for A, B, and C become these equations in here. At the inlet, when Z equals 0, you have this initial condition, also with these values of the parameters. How did you solve this thing using a MATLAB code? This one is taken from the Bruce A. Finlayson book, which is introductions to a simple MATLAB code to solve this initial value problem. To solve this problem, we just use these variables y. So y in here is a factor of 3 components, where the first component will be equal to the CA, second component is equal to the CB, and the third component is equal to the CC. Okay, we make the function in here. This function in here is essentially the ordinary differential equations for the 3 different components, for the A, for the B, and then for the C. Okay, so this one is basically this one. This is one, the first one, the second one, and the third one. So you can see in here. What you need to give into this function is the VR and Y. So whatever in here that is given in here is the Y, in here is the factor. It's consisting of the 3 components. The first one is the CA, the second one is the CB, the third one is the CC. Okay, so the rate, then it basically will calculate the value of this one. It will calculate you the value of this, calculate you the value of this, and this will be, of course, 0 because that is always 0 in here, right? You put it in 0 in here. So, guys, when you put in the dot in here before this multiplication, meaning it will be multiplications per component instead of the matrix multiplication. And then when you put these things again in here, meanings you do a transpose. It's very important that you know in here. So this one is just a simple solution. So you test this value by specifying the value of the CA, CB, and CC. So for example, for this particular value of the CA, CB, and CC, you put in, you calculate this value, rate 1, 0.1, Y. Because your VR, for example, you assume that this one is 0.1. You cross-check with the hand calculations. Does it match with the value when you put in this thing? When you use the K, 0.3, your CA is 0.2. Okay, if you put in the value of the CA 0.2 in here with the K of 0.3 and the velocity of 0.5, you should get this particular value in here. Okay, for this term in here. For the second term, it should be this one, and for the third term should be 0, right? So this is what we call a code validation. So whenever you want to go into the MATLAB code and then you want to calculate whether your MATLAB code is correct or not, you validate using a hand calculations or a value that you know in the beginning. So if your code is correct, then it has to give you the same value with what you have verified that to be correct based on the hand calculations or based on your Excel sheet. That's so-called the code validation. Okay. Step 3. Then you write a code that serves as the driver. The code must set any constant, set the initial conditions and total reactor length, call the ordinary differential equation solver. Okay, so these are the initial conditions for your CA, CB, and CC. Right? This is where you set the total volume of the reactor from 0 up to 2.4. Note that in this case, we are using an ODE solver, but the one that we solve is not in time. Okay, when I put this is actually a dynamic simulation, and we call it initial value problem, but in fact the one that we solve in here is not in terms of the time, but this is solved in terms of the length of the reactor. So this is called initial value problem, but the independent variable in here is not the time, but the reactor length. Okay, so that's why this is so-called the plug flow reactor, and actually this one is actually a steady state problem. But the methodology applies to the initial value problem, for example, if you are using a batch reactor. Okay, so if you do that thing, then you use an ODE 45. You put in you call in your functions where you it basically expresses your differential equations. Then you also put in the range where you want to solve your ordinary differential equation. So this one is given from 0 to 2.4, and then you put in the initial value for your dependent variables in here. Then after that you plot, you use an X label, Y label, and you put in a legend. This is what you get. Okay, with increasing length from 0 up to 2.4, your A will decrease, your B will increase, and then your C will stay constant. Right? So each curve is labeled with a different symbol in the plot command, and the curves are easy to distinguish. Therefore, you can vary parameters to see their effect. So this is how you solve this particular initial value problem. Okay, before I go into the final example where I will show you an interesting problem where we have a stiff example. Do everybody has any questions up to this particular point of time? Alvin, Amanda, Clarence, James, Jason, Jonathan, Juliana, Chising, Michael, Taha, Usman, Rachel, Selena, Tiffany, Yusi, Wong Yo, Wei Xing, any questions up to this particular point? Anybody? Alvin, Tiffany, Selena, Rachel, no questions up to this particular point. Hungry? Okay, let's try to make it up quicker. Let's try to make this thing quicker. Okay, so you guys are there is no questions up to here. The derivations for this plug flow reactor will be given in here. So what you do is, if when you run these things, the ODE, you go back again into the command prompt, you can see that this YO is 202, the Z span is 024. If I open my MATLAB, okay, I will know that this Z actually consisting of 65 rows. Okay, this is basically your X value axis. Okay, and then if I want to check what is the Y value, is actually consisting of a matrix of 3 different columns with 65 rows. The first one in here is my CA. The second one is my CB. The third one is my CC in here. Okay, so that's what you get from your, after you solve your ODE. One is the value of your independent variables. The other one is the value of your dependent variable. Okay, this is what you need to go into the MATLAB code. Sometimes you need to go and check, go into the command prompt, actually what is your variable giving you. So MATLAB is not very straightforward. You need to go and check again your command prompt, try to go back again there. Okay, now we have an interesting problem. This is a so-called a transient continuous stirred tank reactor problem. Reactor does not always run at a steady state. So for example, many pharmaceutical products are actually made in the batch mode. For the batch-to-batch accountabilities, right? Like I discussed in your week 1. Such problems can be solved using the techniques presented earlier. So imagine you have two model. This is a time dependency STR. Okay, the first one is describing your mole balance or your mass balance. Okay, the second one is your energy balance. We will not go into the details of how this one is derived. Huh? Okay, but the most important thing is that you know that there are different phases in here. One is in the fluid phase, the other one is in the solid phase. Okay, and we give you a bit of nomenclature in here for you to check the what all these parameters correspond to. Okay, so we can then go to make our life simple by coming up with the dimensionless forms. I know that probably you will not agree with me that the changing the dimension to dimensionless will make your life simple, but for the sake of explaining and interpretation, then it's very simple according to many chemical engineers. Okay, the parameters here are defined as this. This is a T, this is the residence time, Dampf-Kohler number, and then also you have the Lewis number and this beta in here. Okay, so in essence, what we want to solve is this particular two ordinary differential equations. Note that for the first equations in here is a function of the C, a function of the temperature. The second one in here, a function of the temperature and also a function of the concentration. So these are interlinked equations, these two. This ODE, they have to be solved simultaneously. Okay, so let's say for the sake of the argument, we give these parameters. This beta is equal 0.15, gamma 30, dA 0.115, Lewis 1080. The initial concentration at time t equals 0 is 0.7. The initial dimensionless concentration. The initial dimensionless temperature at time t equals 0 is equal 1. Okay, so you need to create a function that describe your ordinary differential equation in dimensionless form, which is this one. Okay, that you need to do. Like I told you again, when we talk about this one, we are talking about the old problem. So after 2010, then we can get something else again. But because back before 2010, the MATLAB does not come with the structured variable that allows you to pass one variables or many set of variables from one function to the other function. Then we utilize this so-called function called the global in here. This global in here will set the variables to be applicable in everywhere, in the different functions, in everything, basically will be applicable. That's why it's called global. Okay, so this 2 y.1 and y.2 is essentially equal to your these two in here, the two differential equation. Okay. This is how you solve the problem. You create another MATLAB file, okay, where you put in the beta, gamma, Lewis, Kohler, and then you have something that is weird where you put in a tick and then tock. This tick is the same when you put in your stopwatch. Tick is starting, tock is stop. So you want to measure how long for this particular line of the toolbox to be executed. Okay, note that this is the initial value. Oh no, this is you want to solve from 0 until 2. The initial value of the concentration, dimensionless concentration is 0.7. The initial value of the dimensionless temperature is equal 1. Then you want to plot the concentrations at different time and also the temperature. Okay, so what happens if you do these things from 0 to 2? You see that the concentrations in here start on increasing. This is the temperature when you try to solve from 0 up to 2. So you can see that, oh, my concentration seems to be reaching the steady state already in here, since the temperature does not seem to change. But this is not correct. Okay, when you run these things, you only need about 0.004241 seconds. You know these things because you put in a tick and then a top. So this will calculate this thing. Then you can increase again the time. You go for 20. What happens if you want to go to 20? You just need to change this 2 with 20. Okay, and then you calculate the thing. You see that this even be more clear. Your temperature looks still the same in here up to 20, but your temperature seems to be stay constant. Your concentration seems to be stay constant. Your temperature, I mean, beyond 4, it seems like there is no change again in here. Your temperature seems to be flat, but this is actually not the case, because actually when you increase it to 20, then you don't have much differences with before. It's only 0.004, so you're adding 0.001, right? You're still not sure whether this is correct or not. You increase up to 1000. Okay, you increase up to 1000. You see something that is a bit changing in the behavior. Now your concentration seems to go down. Your temperature seems to go up, which you cannot observe when you are dealing up to 20 seconds. You can only see when it's very, very long enough already, up to 1000 seconds in here. Something comes a bit weird, because you see that this one, now when you increase it from 20 to 1000, then you increase the computational time by 2 orders of the magnitude, from 0.005 to 0.1 in here. Okay, you don't stop again. You keep on trying it again. You solve it up to 40,000 basically. So in order for that, you need to increase it, this one. You need to change it to 40,000, and that is possible because you are just using a MATLAB toolbox solver. This is where you can see the real behavior. So the concentration will initially go up, okay, reaching a plateau, and then this will go down. The temperature increasing very slowly up to 40,000, where you basically see the real plateau. Now this you can, what is surprising in here is the change in the magnitude of your computational time. From 0.0004 becomes 4, so it increased by 3 orders of the magnitude. So this is what we call a stiff problem. Okay, why? Because you have the concentration and the temperature, these two have a different time constants, or something that what we call the time responses of the two variables are very different. One is quicker than the other by significant amount. So this is what we call a stiff system. Okay, if you use a stiff system and then you want to save up your computational time, instead of putting a ODE 45, you need to go into a special toolbox, MATLAB toolbox for ODE solver that can handle the stiff system. One such system is called ODE 15S, for example. Okay, so up to the week 6, or I can say that this will be the final lecture for this week, because and we are basically already finishing half of this process modeling. We have discussed the LAM model, how to develop the LAM model, which is the easiest model in chemical engineering. And then we also have discussed how you are able to solve analytically or numerically a steady-state LAM model and dynamic LAM model. Okay, so these are very important. I think after above this point of time, then we will just go quicker with the material, and I will not add much more material, but rather I will just go through briefly with you on how we develop a distributed model. But the distributed model itself will be covered much more detail in transfer phenomena when we are dealing with the momentum, heat, and mass transport later on. Okay. Okay, I think that will be all for my process modeling for today. Do I have any questions from everybody? Is Alvin, Amanda, Clarence, James, Jason, Jonathan, Juliana, Chising, Michael, Taha, Usman, Rachel, Selena, Tiffany, Yusi, Mongyo, Weising, anything that you want to ask me up to this particular point? No? I'm tracking your attendance list. No, you guys feeling hungry like same like Jonathan? Time for you to go for lunch. Okay, let me stop my recording first.